Alright, what's up everyone? I'm doing a bit more of a freestyle rant here, so just kind of, bouncing from topic to topic that sort of crosses my mind. And I decided, something I want to touch on was sort of I would even say self-sabotaging ideologies that a lot of these red pill and based guys go for. And one of the most self-sabotaging ideologies, I would say like the most self-sabotaging ideology, is going for this traditional patriarchy. They want to go back to the traditional patriarchy and, this sort of like the traditional patriarchy and, this world where it's like very, very conservative, right-wing authoritarian. They go for a lot of these authoritarian right-wing philosophies, conservative authoritarian philosophies, which, mind you, they're not even like remotely Christian, to be honest with you. On top of that, the biggest mistake that I see, the biggest fucking mistake that I see of all time, the biggest mistake is these guys think that somehow it's going to be better under these extreme patriarchies. It's not. If anything, throughout history, patriarchal societies have been more exclusive, particularly against men. They were definitely more sexually exclusive, but there was also social and economic exclusivity. Now, I'm not here to brag on my laurels, but I have served in the military and I have worked for, these contracting agencies. Obviously, private security, didn't really do much for them. And I've been involved a lot in the Second Amendment community, right? Although I would say I'm much more on the libertarian side. I'm going to go past that. So one of the things that I saw was that as these patriarchies sort of create these extremely sexually exclusive systems to where pretty much, like, I think out of the population there may be 10 or 20 guys, maybe like 2% of the men that are hand selected, right? They have to be hand selected by the woman. The women just have to just naturally gravitate towards them, or they need to have a fuckload of money, fuckload of charisma, experience, game, what have you, being lucky. Mind you, there's a lot of risks that just go involved in, upping your game. You have to be tactful about it. You got to be careful. To where essentially you either have to be a man with money, power, and connections, and or you got to be a guy that's just, happens to be the cream of the crop. You just happen to be chosen, selected. You're the right guy. The third alternative is just having kind of this, I want to say kind of this, not conscientiousness, but they have a very high sense of awareness. They have good pattern recognition, extremely good pattern recognition, and they're almost sort of just psychopathic or Machiavellian. Now, a lot of these guys, and I did this too, mind you, is they will justify to themselves and they will rationalize their behaviors as not only, it's decent. Obviously you hear everyone say, well, if you were in my situation, you do the same thing, or hey, you do what you got to do when the situation is bad enough, push comes to shove, whatever. There's plenty of that. But there are maybe a select few group of men. They're not the same as a select few, cream of the crop guys. They know where they stand, they know their situation, and they know that they are willing to do whatever it takes to get what they want, right, from women and also economically. They essentially know how to work the system from within. And they do this by being able to compartmentalize and rationalize their decisions. They'll sort of say something along the lines of, okay, in terms of sex, it would be, This world just needs more people like me. So, I don't know, whatever. I'm gonna, like fucking, I'm gonna lie about my education, lie about my job history. I'm gonna get, surgery maxing, pharma maxing. And mind you, surgery maxing 9 times out of 10, it sucks and it's pretty limited. It's like extremely limited as what you can do with surgery maxing, even if you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. Your best bet, pharma maxing all the way. There's about 1 billion things you can do. I was one of the guys that I did a fuckload of research on this, literally just spending hours a day on these little topics about pharmaceuticals, research documents, anecdotal evidence, chemistry, solubility, compounding. I mean, you name it. I was essentially just running the numbers and crunching the numbers and doing the pattern recognition, pricing everything from top to bottom. Right, I was one of those guys. And so you could say there are a handful of those guys that are able to rationalize themselves and compartmentalize their behavior and say, something along the lines of, they're doing it for the greater good. This world needs more people like me. Or the money is better off in my hands because, if the money's in my hands, then I can help the people that I want to help and whatnot. And that's true. Obviously, the best way to make a difference in this world that you want is to have a fuckload of money. Just like boatloads of fucking money, bro. Ridiculous amounts of money. The best way to take care of the people close to you, next to you, and at your sides, also having a lot of money. Having money, power, connections, all that shit is the best way to do it. And so, that's what a lot of these black pill guys do. And I really hate using kind of these terms, black pill, red pill, blue pill, left, right, conservative, all that, because of the, mainstream political connotations and associations. Rather, instead, I kind of like to be more in the specifics and the weed of things. So, back to what I was saying about these, sort of self-sabotaging ideologies, is that in these patriarchal systems, right, you see this shit in prison. Like, guys are the biggest fucking blue falcons out there, right? Like, the patriarchies are the patriarchal systems, particularly patriarchal systems that are sexually exclusive, are the most patriarchal out there. They are not just the most patriarchal, they're the most, like, it fucks over these incel, red pill base guys more than any other system. We've all heard the stories of, what happens to, sexual deviant guys in prison, right? We've all heard the stories of, they'll shit on their, little spoon, break off the spoon, shit on it, shove it into their, chest or whatever, shove it into their eye. I've heard these crazy shit stories. Then, of course, you have, sort of these guys are gonna protect a woman. Andrew Tate, right? He's been, documented saying, it's a man's duty to protect women. He was into sex trafficking. He was into pimping. That is what a pimp is. Pimps are just, it's really just a synonym for a simp and a blue falcon. Because, truth is, people are more psychologically and emotionally motivated than I think most people realize. And it's more so than they want to admit. You see this a lot in the boomer generation, right? When you talk to boomers, they'll say, money is everything. Money motivates everything. It's the sole motivation of behavior. And I can tell you that is not the case. And it's funny as shit because they'll literally say all this shit like right afterwards that contradicts it. And so you could say that the modern dating culture is actually an effect of boomer ideology. Yeah, all this boomer ideology and whatever, that's what created the modern dating culture. That's the blue pill. Um, all the blue pill bullshit, the whole sloganeering that these sort of neo-libs like to do. Same with the neoconservatives. All the buzzwords and slogans and one-liners that they like to do, that's all comes from boomers. That's like it's something you notice about boomers, right? The only good thing that they really had was the music. And of course, I guess you could say giving birth to millennials and Gen Z, if you want to call it that. Other than that, it has essentially become a virus. And I'm not saying it's bad, it doesn't work in most of these environments. Because you got to realize, the boomers kind of grew up like right after World War II, when a good chunk of the male population was just completely wiped off the earth. And even afterwards, you had years and years of all these sort of proxy wars in which, it was not uncommon for 100,000 men to die in a single day in just one location. It was a normal thing. Like, hey, if 100,000, 200,000 dudes die in a single battle, that's like normal. It's like, okay, whatever. World War II, it was normal for millions of people to die in a single fucking battle. And yeah, with that being said, obviously the demographic shifts would have played a role. But that's the other problem, is you're focusing way too much on demographics. If anything, I, as a man who has worked, under the supervision and command of both men and women, I can say that feminism is probably the best thing that a lot of these, red pill incel guys can have. Like, most people don't realize this, right? But a lot of these older patriarchal societies, they were extremely sexually exclusive. Eventually getting to the point where, these patriarchal figures became so authoritarian and just power hungry and paranoid that they essentially began to just be scared shitless of their own men. Essentially just creating these blue falcon militaries. That's essentially how it ran. It was just on fucking over your battle buddies because, like, you can't risk having him take you over, or, fucking your precious daughter or whatever. No, we gotta fuck this guy over. And likewise, the steppe nomads, the Turks and Mongols, actually were really successful because they incentivized the kind of behavior that, these patriarchal men, these patriarchal leaders so despised. Right? The Chinese, the Chinese civilizations, the emperors, the Byzantines, they were all, collecting harems and fucking guys over and castrating boys sometimes as soon as they were born. And, a lot of these guys end up defecting to these sort of steppe nomads. It was actually a pretty common thing. It wasn't really mentioned. But yeah, a lot of them actually wanted to be ruled by, these Turks and Mongols. And they actually wanted to join in with Genghis Khan. It was actually like well documented for when Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan, and when these guys, these Khans and Khans, and these Khans, Khan, and Beys, when they entered these cities, they would give men an option to essentially defect and enlist into their own ranks. And pretty much being able to plunder a city, burn it down, kill all the guys, and just do whatever you want with the women, the leftover, jewelry, food, money, whatever. Just do whatever you want with them. That was essentially the enlistment bonus. That was pretty much their pay grade. So they were directly incentivized to perform well and to literally stack as many bodies as they can. That was their incentive, and it worked really fucking well. Of course, when they adopted this, civilized culture, and all the the sex, sexuality, the economic principles, and everything else, how that cultural aspect became more patriarchal and more centralized and exclusive, to where essentially created these super highly concentrated oligarchies. And as a result, men just got tired of that shit. These men would, most of these guys were just like, okay, fuck it, you're better off being a criminal. And you see that in today's society, where, if you're an honest, good, stand-up guy, you are going to get fucked over time and time and again. You have to be cutthroat, and you have to essentially be willing to subconsciously, essentially compartmentalize, and then subconsciously get it into your head that, hey, look, if I have more money and power, I can have more influence to help the people that I want. Right? Because the way I see it is, if you're in a land of thugs, you got to speak their language. When in Rome, do as the Romans, right? When in England, speak English. When in Germany, you speak German. And when you're in the land of thugs, you speak like a thug. When you're in Sparta, you speak as the Spartans do. That's it. And a lot of those guys, they were able to learn it, and they succeeded a lot. That's why these stand-up guys, they don't get anywhere. They just get fucked over time and time and again. It's these cutthroat guys, that embrace the criminal culture. And mind you, embracing the criminal culture and whatever doesn't necessarily mean like fucking people over and, just being as greedy as you fucking can. Because there comes a point where it's obviously sadistic. Like, you just have a fucking insecurity complex. You have an inferiority complex, and you just want money for the sake of, being able to, I don't know, fucking do stupid shit. Obviously, that's not the only route you have to take. There is a route in which you can do this, with mutual benefit. Look, I've ran a lot of criminal operations. I don't want to say I've ran them, but I've been involved, somehow, at least indirectly involved in criminal occupations, right? I, walk around, take the bus a lot. I drive around all around the town, around the state, around this part of the country a lot. I go to California, Nevada, sometimes even Colorado, Utah, been to Oregon, like, for a couple hours for a layover, right? And you see a lot of these criminal dudes, these criminal people, they stay quiet, they stay as the quiet professionals, and they just get shit done. They get shit done, and they help their people out. That's amazing. Guys, that's literally the best thing you could do as want to help your people out. Be a criminal, like, embrace the criminal culture, embrace the underworld, what have you. Like, how do women help each other out? They do shit on OnlyFans and whatever. They make shitloads of money, and then they can do what they want to do. Right? Like, men do that too, but they're much more quiet, and they're few and far between. So that's the thing, is a lot of these, these underworld organizations, they're essentially doing this shit, a lot of these criminal underworlds, they do that shit. And, the funny thing is, when in regards to, like, OnlyFans or sex work or whatever, a lot of these, that whole system, these women rely on guys that are white knights and simps. Now, I want to make it clear that a white knight and simp is not the same as, essentially being in a situation where you don't have that much leverage. You know, if you're a guy and you're down bad and you're, willing to go the extra mile for, the bare minimum of pussy, that's not being a simp. That's just, like, you don't have options, right? You don't have leverage in the situation, and you do what you can. That's just, hey, swallow your pride and get over it. And the guys that get all pissed off about this will then turn around and embrace these sort of fucking conservative right-wing cultures that continue to fuck them over and put them in these situations. That's why literally this fucking shit gets nowhere. So if anything, these guys are better off liberal. Like, I'm not even kidding, dude. These guys are literally better off fucking liberal. That's about it, dude. That's, like, fucking guys are so fucking stupid these days. Anyways, that's about it for now. I'm probably just fucking sounding like a broken record at this point. I'm gonna see how many minutes I've done so far. But, yeah. Alright, 21 minutes. Alright, peace, take care. Probably looking to do a live stream soon. That's it, guys. Talk to us soon.